Hi, good morning, everyone. So we're going to continue our talk of framing today, and then we'll see how far it goes. Okay. One student asked last night, more about what is a frame, and it's a certain sort of biased way of looking at reality. And so if you hear people talking about detecting bias, that's maybe related to framing, but it's really just like oftentimes it's just a metaphor, and and if you buy into that metaphor, then it sort of affects the way that you view reality. And one way you can check for a frame, especially in the media, it doesn't help as much in computer science. In computer science, it's really hard to check your own assumptions on something. Like if you're positive that you're writing a function that's supposed to, I don't know, do something, and it takes a number. If it just doesn't occur to you that the number could be negative, and like I said, my students in CSI 40 were dying because there's a bug, not by me, but by some third party that just assumed that elevation will always be positive or non-negative. And so in computer science, there's tools called like fuzzing tools, where like it'll test your code by like randomly picking values and things like that. So there's ways and means for that. But picture frames. Yeah, I got a pretty nice one right here, I think. So that's a decent looking one. It's a ukiyo-e from it's a kuniyoshi from 1860s, 1870s, something like that. So yeah, I like collecting ukiyo-e. It's a Japanese woodblock prints because I'm a nerd. Anyway, so but in politics and media, oftentimes it's a lot easier to detect the frames simply by thinking about, if I had to describe this issue in as neutral a way as possible, how would I do that? And if you're talking about like the abortion debate, how would you phrase it? What words would you use if you were trying to be absolutely fair and not have any bias whatsoever? Framing con 4K. Yeah. So like, how would you do it? Like, I'll toss it out on chat. Like, if you had to ask about, like, let's say you're gonna do a poll, and framing is a big thing in polls too, by the way. So if you're gonna do a poll to see if people agreed or disagreed with abortion, how would you phrase it if you wanted to be absolutely neutral? Tough one, isn't it? And some people, by the way, think that neutrality is a myth. I attended a talk at Duke earlier in the year, and the person said, neutrality is a myth. We shouldn't even try. Bias is a fact. Deal with it. We should just embrace being biased. And I'm like, bro, if you're a professor, it's you really should not be biased. And that's a reason why I very deliberately, I don't try to be unbiased in everything I say. I just balance. If I ever go after the right wing, I'll go after the left wing, and I very deliberately do one for one. So that's my way of dealing with it. So how would you, if you do a poll, you could find your terms with the common definition. Yeah. So how would you do it? How would you, let's say you're doing a poll, you wanted to find out if Americans were for or against abortion, and you wanted to be as neutral as possible. How would you phrase it? You could use both frames. Yeah, that is definitely one approach. Do you believe a baby is formed at conception? Okay. But that's kind of getting at the the use of the term baby, right, is part of, somebody will probably object to that. It's not a baby, it's an embryo. PewDiePie breathes. Popular YouTuber abuses oxygen and forces it to make him live. Yeah, that's an example of framing, but it's really kind of tricky. One great example of how framing and polling can affect the results is when you ask Americans if so there's a notion called young Earth creationism, right? Young Earth creationism is the notion that the Earth is not billions of years old as science says it is. I don't remember the exact age, so don't quote me on that. But rather, it's about 5,000 years old, created by God. And so depending on how you ask that question, you will get responses that, like the percentage of Americans that agree with it, very, very broad. Like if you say, who do you trust more, science or religion? That's that's one way you can put it, right? Or another one is, do you think God created the universe? Which is again a different question than young Earth creationism. And if you just ask, do you think the Earth is 5,000 years old, you'll get a much smaller number, right? Versus if you just say, who do you trust more, science or religion? And so depending on how you phrase it, you can get a widely different response on it. Okay. You understand it now? Okay. The Earth is only a year old, right? And so you can frame that question in a variety of different ways. And depending on how you frame it, you'll get different results. I'm somebody that did polls for a living for a number of years, and you have to be very careful when you ask questions to try to be as neutral as possible. Okay. So, this is from ripped from today's headlines. Not quite today. It was a couple weeks ago. Check this out. So I don't know if you guys have heard about the Blizzard lawsuit, but Blizzard is a company that makes video games and is also in the business of sexual harassing women. Apparently, that's their second biggest product. I think is sexual harassment, and I'm good at being neutral. Yeah, not there. So Blizzard is the company that made games like StarCraft and Warcraft and Diablo and things like that. And they're being sued by kind of like everyone right now, federal government, state government, and due to systematic sexual harassment. Okay. And that's a more neutral way of framing it. They're being sued by the federal and state governments for widespread sexual harassment. That's or alleged sexual harassment. That's a more neutral way of phrasing it. The first way I put it was obviously biased against them, and the reason why I'm a bit biased against them is because I had a friend who worked on, maybe not a friend, like an acquaintance, whatever. She's awesome, so I'll call her a friend. I don't care. And she worked on games like Fallout New Vegas and things like that, and she applied for a job at Blizzard, and she said that when she went in there, like the room, like the office was all dim, like it was, just cave lighting, and as she's walking in to go to the interview, like heads start popping up around the cubicles, like, it's a girl, there's a girl interviewing, there's a girl, and like all it's like gopher heads popping up out of holes. A girl, oh my gosh, a girl. And yeah. So so when these allegations of sexual harassment came out, I was like, just remembering what Tess told us. So I brought her out here to talk to my game development class a couple years ago. I love blizzards. Yeah. At Dairy Queen, that's a different kind of blizzards. So somebody new worked on Fallout New Vegas. Yeah, she was like, if you look at the credits, she was like the third name or so in the credits. So yeah, she's a cool person. She's a very cool person. She was married to a friend of mine, and yeah, no, she's just an excellent game maker. That's what I'll say. She's working for Respawn now, I think. Yeah, her name's Tess. Tess Tappan now, I think. Back then she was Tess Treadwell, named after. She changed her name for my buddy Treadwell. Okay, so here is how Blizzard responded to these things. So check out just this. This is a quote right from their press release. So just check out how much framing they have in this. This is public relations, right? They're making a press release. Well, watch how they frame certain things. Okay, Activision Blizzard has made a number of important improvements, including significant changes to personnel, exiting a number of employees, and expanding compliance resources. In addition, compliance resources. So if you guys see any words that are indicative of bias or framing, just call them out in the chat channel. Number of important improvements, including significant changes to personnel, exiting a number of employees, expanding compliance resources. In addition, the company has refreshed its HR organization. It's refreshing now. It's been refreshed. And this week we'll welcome a new Chief People Officer, Julie Hodges, who joins the company from the Walt Disney Company. What a nice company that is. Exiting instead of firing. Yeah. I was like, that's funny. I've never heard somebody use the word exiting before, but you immediately know what it means. And yeah. Yeah, I've never heard somebody be exited before. I could just be living under a rock. I don't know. I've never been exited myself. I don't know. The company has also expanded training, performance management, and anti-harassment resources. You have no idea what this paragraph is about? Yeah, I'm pretty sure exited means fired. I think they sacked. You know, that's a less nice way of putting it. They sacked a lot of people. They pink slipped them. They gave them the boot. Instead, they used exiting. Anti-harassment resources. The company remains committed. They're not becoming committed. They're not starting commitment. They remain committed to ensuring it is the most welcoming, inclusive game company and connecting and engaging its 400 million players through epic entertainment created by the very best people in the industry. Sounds like they're admitting they're guilty. It sounds like they just fired a lot of people, including the head of HR that just refreshed. And they have a chief people officer now. The very best people, yeah. Yeah, if you had the very best people, you wouldn't have had the Cosby suite. All right, so seriously, like the Blizzard people at BlizzCon would have a room called the Cosby Suite, where the dudes would hit on women. Apparently, a more neutral way of putting that. Not very neutral, but more neutral than what I could say. No wonder it was hard to read. They completely reworded it. Yeah. So, because we got caught, we fired a bunch of people, hired a bunch of new people. Please remember we're a big company and people love us. Please stop, hurting us with your lawsuits and stuff. Yeah, something along those lines. So, yeah, brilliant like when I read this, I was just dying. I was like, this is amazing. This is an amazing statement. And just, you know, yeah, just one word after another. It remains committed to being a welcoming, inclusive company. Yeah, yeah. If your company had been a welcoming, inclusive game company, it wouldn't have tolerated the massive amounts of alleged sexual harassment from the people that you have now fired, and you wouldn't have to rename McCree in Overwatch, because McCree was named after one of the guys that got exited. So it's high noon. Bye, cowboy. I don't know where I'm going with that. Okay, so he's now named Cowboy. Is he really? Did they name him? I didn't know they actually had renamed him. Overwatch McCree. So is he not Cowboy yet, or is this just not updated? That's okay. Yeah. So yeah, he was named after a real life person that was involved in some of the alleged bad behavior. Okay, so you know, I think the frames here are pretty obvious. One's left wing, one's right wing. See if you can figure out which one of these illustrations was made by the left wing, which one was made by the right wing. I'll give you a second. Oh, in Overwatch League, they only call him Cowboy. Yeah, it's funny. Because Overwatch League is organized by Blizzard, so it's interesting. Okay, it's high noon. Yeah. There's plans to rename him. Yeah. And then there were a lot of other people that are involved in the Cosby Suite and World of Warcraft. Like there's NPCs named after these people that are getting renamed as well. The left is left wing. Oh, that's a bit ironic, isn't it? Why? You know, what about punching Nazis? Like, I mean, shouldn't everybody be for punching Nazis? I mean, you know, Nazis are bad people who did the Holocaust and, you know, invaded France and stuff. Poland, right? Pretty bad people. I mean, why? I mean, what are they coming after? What is the point of this? Why? You know, why is this left wing? Like, didn't the right wing participate in D-Day? You know? Why? What are they getting at here? What's the frame? Obviously, that's Captain America. What is the mental frame they're creating? If you can identify frames, by the way, this is going to help you a lot in life. What's it getting at? What is the purpose of these frames here? Left one or the right one? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, punching them is good, sure, but what's the... There's some right-wing Nazi sympathizers, yeah. So the one on the left here is arguing that it is okay to engage in violence when the target is a Nazi, specifically somebody on the right wing. And to what extent people on the right wing are identified as Nazis varies from person to person. Like at Berkeley, somebody was attacked for wearing a red hat. It wasn't a MAGA hat, it was just a red hat, and somebody hit him with, I don't know, like a bike lock, or maybe they just punched him or something, you know. So, you know, sometimes the definition of Nazi is fairly expansive, like if you just happen to be wearing a red hat, you know. There was a number of fights at Berkeley, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Violence is always the answer. Yeah. So the and then the response from the right wing to this is basically they're saying everybody I don't like is Hitler, right? So, and this also sort of, probably brushes under the rug the fact that there are some neo-Nazis and stuff like that in America, but they're essentially framing the left as just sort of painting everybody with a broad brush, just calling everybody opposed to them as Hitler, right? So, I just saw the little binder, the little golden books, yeah. Mm-hmm. I had these when I was a kid. I don't know if you guys still have them, but we had a bunch. Not this. This book's obviously not real. But. Okay, so here you have Antifa portraying themselves as heroic. What's the meaning of the slingshot here? Okay, so by the way, these slides are from the Berkeley protests and riots is kind of where I was taking these things from, and these are from actual social media posts. I didn't hunt for these. These are from my friends' social media, right? I have many friends, not like a lot, like some of these influencers, but I have a lot of friends, and I have friends across the political spectrum, and so I just kind of pay attention to what they're posting on Facebook, and I save them, and they don't know I do this, and their names aren't on here or anything, it's just what they're sharing. It's very interesting to me. So what is the slingshot for? Why is Antifa representing themselves as having a slingshot? What's the meaning of that? Yeah, David and Goliath, right? They're the underdog taking on the big dog and armed with nothing but a slingshot, right? And then the right wing, this is one of my right wing friends, said, here's a typical Antifa person, all my heroes kill cops, right? And then on the left side here, we have, headed to Berkeley to disrupt the neo-Nazi white supremacist circle jerk today. Never SAF, but determined to bring back 100 Nazi scalps. So, like, heroic, respect, stay safe, fighter, And then on the right side here, you see how they're framing the same people in different ways. Yep, same issue, same people. This isn't the same person, obviously. But when people are sharing things on Facebook, if the right-wing people were sharing things like this, kind of making fun of the appearance of people on the left, or so you look at how heroic the Antifa people are, and white men are terrorists, is obviously a gross generalization, right? And so that's cherry picking, right? If you want to say which fallacy this is, cherry picking. Here is one person that represents everybody on the, in the group. Sounds like an awful like a fallacy. Yeah, that is quite obviously a false generalization, right? So it's very interesting to me, and all these things are very interesting to me. Like, the Activision press release, very interesting to me. What my friends are sharing is very interesting to me. Like, because you don't see people on the left sharing this, and you don't see people on the right sharing this. Like. There's different views, different frames on the same issue, different frames on reality. Is Antifa this heroic, underdog, organization punching Nazis, or are they a bunch of people who claim these kind of outrageous things that look kind of weird and funny, that want to kill cops, things like that, and two different views, two different frames on the same reality. So there's some great videos of I can probably play these without getting a copyright strike. So I'll do that for you. It's kind of fun. Yeah, frames are very, very important in politics, public relations. Really, if you deal with the public in general, just always be very cognizant of what frame you're using. Like, if you're referring to yourself, pick a positive frame for yourself. So here is Nixon sabotaging himself with a bad frame. Let's see if you can figure out why. Okay, so I'm going to play this video of Nixon, And it's establishing a frame. He's giving himself a frame. And see why it was not a good idea.
I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes. But in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
President?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How is he framing the debate on himself? Why was this a problem? Ostensibly, yeah. Ostensibly, he's trying to make himself out to be the good guy. But that wasn't the frame that he created. He was trying to make himself out to be the good guy. How is he framing the debate? This is at the time of like Watergate and stuff like that. How is he framing the debate over himself? What was the fundamental question that he was saying that people should be thinking about? Yeah, he was defending himself, right? But that wasn't the frame that he was creating. It was a sabotage. He sabotaged himself. He said he's not a crook, but that's, again, you guys are kind of getting at it. But what is the frame for the debate, right? Remember how we talked about frames for debate? When you're talking about the abortion debate, if you can make the abortion debate about if a woman has a right to choose, you've already won the debate, right? Because pretty much everybody with good conscience, and there's probably some horrible misogynistic people, say that no, women shouldn't have the right to control their own body. Basically, everybody of good character thinks that, yeah, women should have the right to control their own body. If they want to get a haircut, whatever, that's part of liberty, and they have the right to do that. So if you can make the abortion debate over the question of whether a woman has the right to choose what to do with her own body, you've won the debate already, without even, starting. Before you've even started, you've won the debate. But if you can make the right to life the issue, do humans have the right to life? Does a baby have a right to life? Most people of good character would say, yes, a baby has the right to life. So the frame is the question that is being asked. And if you can control the question that's being asked, then you can control whether you win or lose. And in this case, what is the question that Nixon is asking the debate to be about? What question? Is he saying this is what we should debate? I haven't seen it yet. The public has a right to know what? If their president is a crook. And so if you're debating whether or not your president is a crook, is he a crook? Is he not a crook? That's a very powerful frame, and he sabotaged himself, because you don't want, if you're a politician, you don't want people like, in their kitchens being like, all right, is he a crook or not? It's he basically shot himself in the foot with that one. Okay, self-destruction 100. Yeah, exactly. Now this is another. This time Reagan was dealing with the age question. Okay, at the time he was running for his second term in office, Reagan was, I think, the oldest person to run for president, and there were concerns. There were concerns that he would not have enough energy to finish out his second term, that he was too old for the job. Okay, so watch how he reframes the question on the age issue.
You already are the oldest president in history. some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Is there any doubt in your mind you'd be able to function in such circumstances? Most people have some doubt, you know. Most people have some doubt, you know. And so that was the moderator there was offering an unfair question to Reagan. Is there any doubt in your mind that you'd be tired, you know, if there is a world-shaking crisis like the Cuban Missile Crisis? So that was a frame that was offered. And watch how Reagan rejects the frame and offers a new one.
Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And I mean, when you get your debate opponent for president laughing, like it's like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. You know. Right. So a frame was offered. You're too old. He rejected it, and he said, "I'm not going to use my opponent's youth and inexperience against him." The dude was like already in his 60s or 70s, right? So. And then Reagan has a bunch of communism jokes, which was framing life in the Soviet Union.
I've been collecting stories that are told in the Soviet Union by their people among themselves, which reveal they've got a great sense of humor, but they've also got a pretty cynical attitude toward their system. And I told this one, Bill, you'll have to hear it again. I told it in the car. I didn't tell this one to Gorbachev. You know, there's a 10-year delay in the Soviet Union of delivery of an automobile. And only 1 out of 7 families in the Soviet Union own automobiles. There's a 10-year wait. And you go through quite a process when you're ready to buy, and then you put up the money in advance. And this happened to a fellow, and this is their story that they tell.
Fellow, not fellow.
That this man, he laid down his money, and then the fellow that was in charge said to him, "Okay, come back in 10 years and get your car." And he said, "Morning or afternoon?" And the fellow behind the counter said, "Well, 10 years from now, what difference does it make?" And he said, "Well, the plumber's coming in the morning."
You guys hear that? So 10-year delay on getting a car. He asked, is the car going to be ready in the morning or afternoon? The guy says, well, it's 10 years from now. What difference does it make? He said, well, the plumber's coming in the morning. So he's offering a frame and on life in the Soviet Union. Like, nothing works right. You understand? Like, it's a joke and it's funny. But you have to step back and look at the frame that's being established. He is establishing a frame that in the Soviet Union it's dysfunctional. And it might very well have been. You know, I'm not even saying it's inaccurate. You know, I had a friend in Hungary at the time, and he went through that process. And when they got their car, it broke down before they got off the lot. And so they turned around, they're like, "No, we want another car." And they're like, "That's your car." And they're like, "We didn't even leave the lot. You know, you're going to give us another car now." And they got into this big argument. They got into another car and started driving off. And that one, they tried turning the windshield wipers on. They didn't work. So they turned that car around and then got a third car. And this was, you know, after a massive wait to get a car. You know, so it's not even that it was inaccurate. But what Reagan is doing, and he has a whole series of communism jokes and things like that, is he's portraying life in the Soviet Union in a certain, obviously negative light. Okay, so Clinton on welfare reform. I mean, politics are a thing. Video unavailable. That's unfortunate. Okay, well, so Clinton frames people on welfare as being lazy, essentially. So there's a lot of different ways you can view people on welfare. There's a lot of different ways you can view people in the Soviet Union. There's a lot of ways you can view Antifa. There's a lot of ways you can view the right wing. And a frame is a simplified way of dealing with a complex issue, right? If this is your mental model for Antifa, you're going to have a different reaction to them and a different way of talking about them than if this is your mental model. You understand? So we deal with symbols and metaphors and pictures, and they control how we view subjects. You know, do you support them or not? You know, so they blind us to reality a lot of times. You know, so. I'm using Firefox, and so there's an add-on called YouTube Enhancer that allows you to change the colors and things like that. So, you know, I'm not a Zen Buddhist, but there is this tenet, T-E-N-E-T, of Zen Buddhism, which is that you know, our frames essentially are like goggles that we're wearing that distort our view of reality. And it should be the goal of every person to take the goggles off and to try viewing reality as it is. And a Zen koan, which a lot of people have heard, like, what is the sound of one hand clapping, you know, things like that. A lot of people think of koans as riddles, you know, that could be solved. And that's wrong. That's actually a wrong way of viewing it. A koan is a way of sort of revealing your mental frames. Okay. So, for example, they have a phrase in Zen Buddhism that says, when you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha. And your immediate reaction would be like, wait, why would you do that? You're a Buddhist. Right? So, what do you think that means? People on Discord, you know, chime in. So when a Zen Buddhist says, when you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha, what does that mean? Or what do you think it means? There's a lot of interpretations of it. It's kind of famous. What do you think? And what frame is that revealing on us? Because there's a koan usually has like a moment of surprise, like mental, like what? Huh. It's like mental surprise, and that surprise feeling reveals your own bias and perception towards reality, right? What do you guys think it means? Yes, Jim Carrey memes are great, but what do you think it means when you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha? What do you think? You confused? Yeah, it's good. It means it's working. Is he trying to say that religion shouldn't be involved in determining what reality is? Maybe. I don't know. I've had conversations with actual Buddhists on this phrase because I'm curious, like what their take is on it, you know. And so one of them said, well, if you could see the Buddha, that's not actually the Buddha. I was like, oh, that's a good point. You know, if you see a statue of the Buddha, that's not the Buddha. Right? It's just a statue. That's a good point. Because we forget that sometimes, right? Like when you, you know, when you see a religious image, you're like, oh, well, there's Jesus, you know, there's Buddha, you know. Nope, those are just pictures, you know. And so, thank you, Brian. Anyone else? What's another take that you have on it? You don't understand what's happening? So there's a phrase in Zen Buddhism saying, when you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha, which is a weird thing for a Buddhist to say, right? Like, you're supposed to be like respectful and stuff, right? So koans, we think of them as riddles, but what they do is they help reveal our sort of biased way of viewing reality. Okay? Any other takes on it? Be your own maker. Okay. Don't use bluff. Still are confused? Well, the frame that it's revealing, Ashley, is that, you know, when we think of religion, you know, you think of having an attitude of being very respectful, you know, sanctity and purity and respect and cleanliness, all sort of are connected in the human brain when it comes to religion. There's a philosopher by the name of, or psychologist by the name of Haidt, H-I-I-D-T, who did research on hygiene, the hygiene hypothesis for religion, that it's a form of hygiene. And so being, then other people talk about like the sacred umbrella of religion, that, you know, it's a sacred space, and in sacred spaces you shouldn't do certain things. And what this koan, to me, is revealing, and like I said, like I've talked to Buddhists and they have different takes on it, and we're running out of time, so we can't go too far into this. But the frame that this is revealing to me is that we oftentimes come into religion with this attitude of like, it's sacred and holy, and you can't question it. You can't. You have to be very respectful and things like that. And when you see the Buddha, kill the Buddha, to me that is revealing to us ourselves that we have this sort of mental block that stops us from, you know, perceiving reality. That, you know, there's, you know, it's just a statue. You know, it's just a bunch of clay that's been put in a fire. You know, but, you know, like, oh, it's the Buddha. You can't break it. You know, and so the koan reveals that aspect of our brain, that filter that we have on reality to us. That's my take. There's a lot of other takes on it. I've got a book around here somewhere that has essays on like 100 different koans. It's very interesting. Okay, so here's another downside to frames. Like, sometimes frames are so strong that people have trouble even understanding that they could be wrong. For example, the notion of domestic violence being against women is so strong that if you look at the laws in a lot of countries, it refers to she and her, right? In Ireland, the rules say domestic violence is when a man abuses a woman inside of a relationship, right? And so if you're a dude and your wife, you know, stabs you or whatever, it's not domestic violence because it's a woman stabbing a dude, right? And, you know, women do get abused more than men, right? 15% of women have been abused by a partner, but also 7% of men. But this gets mentally erased. The frame of domestic violence being men on women violence is so strong that the fact that it could go the other way, like, oftentimes erases a very real problem. I worked as a grant writer for a nonprofit of men. It was a nonprofit to help men victims of domestic violence. This is not some like hypothetical, you know, men's rights, you know, kind of thing. I actually worked with a charity. I wrote grants for them to get money for like a men's, you know, shelter, essentially, right? And the dude running it was a gay dude, and he had been abused by one of his partners, and he had been trying to find a place where he could stay because there's shelters for people in those kinds of situations, and they all turned him away. because it just hadn't concerned to anybody across this massive social support network that a man could be abused in a domestic relationship. And so as the result of it, he started this charity to offer support to men that were abused. And so, like, if you like, here, let me show this from Yelp. Here's a person who's looking for a battered men's shelter. This is in San Francisco. And San Francisco is, obviously one of the more liberal places in the world. And a friend of mine is seeking refuge from his large and angry wife. Any help would be appreciated. Thanks. So, 2008. This isn't like the 1960s or something. This is, 14 years ago, 13 years ago. And so he's looking for a battered men's shelter in San Francisco, which, if there's any place that would have one, it'd be San Francisco. And the responses from people are telling, because the mental frame that domestic violence has to be a man abusing a woman is so strong that people act in disbelief and comedy that a man could be being abused. This is somebody. I don't doubt them, but outsourcing. Yeah, there's actually, I've actually tried finding good numbers on that, and there is a wide range of estimates. So what I put in there was my best guess on it. There's a number of studies though on it. So look at the responses from people. What's good for the geese is always good for the gander. Oh Sheila, oh Sheila, and this is in response to somebody who's getting domestically abused, right? And they just respond with humor. There's nothing sadder than a man that's scared of his wife. This is in San Francisco. This is San Francisco. This isn't, is this about your fat wife again, Dave? Right? This dude's friend is being abused, and 3 people in a row are just making fun of him because they can't even comprehend. That's how strong the frame is. They can't even comprehend that this is actually happening. Do you refuse to have sex with her again? 4 in a row. Well, Manny, my friend's... This is the original person. This is Dave. Well, Manny, my friend's wife is a very scary woman. You'd probably be scared of her too. Okay. Go to a friend's house and crash there for a few days. Meanwhile, call the cops or something. Right? So, no. Sorry, there's no battered men's shelters. Okay, I just hope she doesn't find him at a friend's house. Yikes. Dang, is she off the rocker or what? Is it medical? Because then I'll have sympathy. Dang, is she off the rocker or what? Is it medical? Because then maybe I'll have sympathy. Person's getting abused. Right? Can you imagine if that was a woman who's being hit by her husband and the person says, well, if he has a medical issue, well, then maybe I'll be sympathetic to her. Can you imagine that? Right? And all of these people are demonstrating that they have a mental frame on. These are goggles that blind them to reality. That domestic violence against men is a problem. Just angry mostly. Not sure why. It's the original person again. Christie's coming back in talking about a friend of hers that, had, or a neighbor that had mental disorder. Be honest, Dave, is this really about you? So, okay, now, I guess 5 people in a row, 6 people in a row, none of which have offered good advice. Give me shelter, Rolling Stones, ha ha ha. Go to a free print shop and get a t-shirt. Really? These are all people in San Francisco, and they're showing zero sympathy. Zero sympathy to a person who is being abused. Right? No, Jessica, it's not about me. My wife would kill me. I can't say I've ever seen a battered men's shelter or a brand spanking new men's shelter either. So they're making fun of the word battered, right? So I haven't seen a battered men's shelter or a brand new men's shelter. Ha 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 ha. Weren't these all dismantled after World War II? Ha 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 ha. Okay. Yeah, this is why Ultron decided to end humanity, right? And these are people in San Francisco, right? She just got worse. Yeah. Okay. Show us a picture of her. You're sad you're still with that heifer, Davey. You and Becky could have been so beautiful together. And that's it. That's the entire thread. It's the entire thread. Every single person on that thread was making fun of the guy for asking for help for his friends. Okay. And then this happened to one of my students. his wife was attacking him, and he was trying to leave, and she blocked the doorway for him to escape. So he picked her up, moved her out of the way, and left, and he got arrested for assaulting her. So, when a woman phones the police, 41% of the time, the man is ordered out and is arrested 20% of the time. When a man phones the police on domestic violence, 0% of the time, the woman was ordered out, and 0% of the time arrested. And I believe this was this was a study in Ireland. This is not all studies, but this is one particular study. It happened to one of my students. And then 12% of the time, when a man calls saying I'm being domestically abused, he gets arrested, which is what happened to my friend. So he called the police, and because he had picked up his wife to move her out of the way because she was blocking his escape, he was arrested for assaulting her. Went to jail. Okay, so shelter services for women, children, pets, and men, right? So this is the charity that I was working with. Is basically looking at these numbers and being like, bro, your sex ed teacher went through this with his ex-wife and nobody believed him. Yeah, it's that's how strong that frame is. And yes, women are much more likely to be abused by men than the other way around, but it does happen. And when it happens, the frame is so strong. You saw those people on Yelp. They just can't believe it. They're just making fun of it. When something is so outrageously different from your mental goggles, we oftentimes just respond with humor and like, ha ha ha, and disbelief, right? So, and so men's rights, I don't want this to be like a men's rights activist thing where it's portraying women as evil or anything. Not at all. But you can just look at the numbers, and just be like, all right, there's a problem. So, and so a one way to view your own frames is to read viewpoints radically different from your own. And this is one of the reasons why I read news stories from every viewpoint possible. Because when you read something that is radically opposed to your own, a lot of times it'll seem crazy, like, what? Ha ha ha, she's a heifer, blah 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 blah. But the more time you spend working with different viewpoints from your own, you're like, oh wait, they actually do kind of have a point sometimes. Not always. Sometimes they are just wrong. But when you read things written by people opposed to yourself, then that helps reveal your own frames, your own biases. Okay. So, that's, I think, a good trick to reveal your own frames. And then, and if you want to reveal frames in the media, like I said, try framing a debate as neutrally as possible, and then see how the media does it. And then you can pick up on if they're left wing or right wing or center wing or reverse wing or something, by looking at the terminology and the words they use. Okay. So, the point of this class is to learn to think. I'm not teaching you guys what to think, but I'm teaching you critical thinking skills on how to think. Okay. Like how to reveal bias in the media sources, how to reveal bias in yourself, how to reveal bias in other people. Because frames are a major source of bias. If your view of the world is such that you can only think of domestic violence as a man hitting a woman, then that's a biased view of reality, right? Because even though it's not as common, it does happen the other way as well. Okay. So, or at least colleges used to be where you'd go to learn to think, and it should still be the place where you learn to think. Maybe not so much anymore, but it should be, and that's one of the nice things about critical thinking classes. So this class here is where all of college used to maybe be like this. Maybe. Where you learn techniques for thinking rather than being ordered to memorize things. Okay, so that's it for today. And I will see you guys on Friday, and I'll put up another quiz on frames, and we'll see you guys, how you guys do on it. All right, see you on Friday.